Hi everyone, it's Cynthia Rose King here to talk to you about tarot again. Nice to see you all, glad you stopped by. So a discussion came up in a group I belong to on tarot, and a person was asking about the blindfold in the Two of Swords, and this would be the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. This is the image from there. And I just found it fascinating how from a simple question, so much discussion can come, so much more depth and understanding, and so much you can flesh out. And there was also a question about what was the best, what should the key words be for the Two of Swords. So there was all kinds of discussion, and it just spurred so many thoughts. And I thought, you know, it's a minor card. It's not one of the big majors. But that all the cards are important, all the cards have depth. And I said, well, you know what? I'm going to use this discussion as a springboard to do a video so that you can kind of get an idea of how I approach tarot, my approach to teaching it, to reading it. And, you know, if you're new to tarot and you don't know that much about it, don't get overwhelmed by this. Don't say, oh, well, I can't ever do all of that or know all of that. I don't know or memorize anything about the cards. And if you are very, very experienced with the tarot, maybe you'll enjoy this little trip down the rabbit hole to see where the discussion goes with the number 2 and specifically the Two of Swords. And, you know, maybe it'll spark some interest for you, share some thoughts. I'd love to hear back from you, your thoughts on the Two of Swords and how you approach interpreting a card when it's in a reading. You know, I love to have discussion and learn new ways. So off we go. That's what we're going to do. That's the goal. I have a few notes. A lot of this is going to be off the cuff. So just bear with me and let's explore the Two of Swords. Okay, so my first response to the statement of what should the keyword be? And my reply was change that should to could be, and you've got a key to beginning to understand and discover how to read tarot cards. Because every card can have a million meanings. Overwhelming, isn't it? It's not, really, trust me. And think of a picture's worth 1,000 words. Do you want to memorize 1,000 words? Of course not. But your mind, your intuition, all your experience, all your knowledge, all this stuff is in your head that this card would spark. And in a reading, it has all that inspiration and all that information in your brain, and your intuition will show you what applies in that particular situation. So that was my first reply to that discussion. And the other was, you know, just thinking about the blindfold, just thinking about the number, just thinking about the elements. Okay, so first and foremost, as I've said, I do not memorize meanings, and I don't think anyone should memorize meanings of the cards. I think it's great to explore possibilities, various meanings that other people have ascribed to the cards, different decks even, and how they've been interpreted, you know, differently than some of the more common decks. But once you get the concept behind the possibilities of each and every card, then you can read in any situation and just allow that wisdom to kind of unfold for you, because you're not locked up into your frontal cortex, a part of your brain, trying to figure out if you have the right answer. You're allowing your intuition to sift through your experience, your wisdom, you know, even if you believe, you know, the wisdom of the universe that can tap into. So, you know, just you're open to so many more possibilities. So it just opens a vast vocabulary. I see the tarot as a picture vocabulary, and that you can then draw on that wisdom from the past that people have ascribed to the cards, your own experience with the cards and things like that. So I could go on and on just with that. So taking just the number 2, thinking about the number 2, some examples, not to be memorized keywords, might be, let's see, the number 2, opposites, choices, pairings, harmony, balance, and now specifically to being swords. Well, swords represent the realm of thoughts and the realm of the mind. and maybe even the willpower. Swords are drawn from the earth and welded through the air, so they cut. They can cause pain, but they can also carve and create beauty and be creative. So that's interesting about swords. So if this person has a Two of Swords in their reading, or you pull this as a card, you may have a decision that you're thinking about a lot. It may indicate something like that, just on the surface, just as a beginning step for what this could mean. Specifically, again, more towards the Two of Swords, it could be weighing options, feeling frozen or stuck or unable to see any other options but these two that you're holding on to. Being in a state of indecision, a kind of an impasse, a stalemate. It's like, it almost seems like, how would you feel? Can you imagine yourself sitting in that position? Is that a comfortable position? Aren't your arms going to get tired? Aren't you, do you feel, is it frightening because you're blinded and you don't know what's going to happen, so you don't make any decision at all? So you can picture yourself in this card, and how does that feel? And then extrapolate or lay out more cards. How do you get unstuck? How do you take off that blindfold? How do you set those swords down? And how do you go about making a decision if this is the position that you find yourself in? Okay. If you're asking the question of, how do I do something? Or how is this a benefit? Or how is this a detriment? Not just trying to ascertain like where you are now, your situation. As a benefit, maybe it's telling you to pause. Maybe it's telling you to shut out the rest of the world and just pause for a moment before you make a decision. As a detriment, maybe it's telling you you're not seeing your other options. Maybe it's telling you you have no decision to make at all. That you've just created this in your mind and you're there creating it in your mind. So you can see where the card could be a benefit, it could be a detriment, it could be explaining the situation that you're currently in. Then you can just think about a bigger picture of the number 2. You have 0, nothing. From nothing, you get light. You get 1, the magician, right? So you have 0, the Fool. Then from out of nothing comes something, comes light, the word, intellect, consciousness, awareness. And what comes after that? Once you have light, instantaneously, what do you have? You have light and you have shadow. It's almost, you can't have one without the other. So even though you say light came first, the instant you create light, you have shadow. That's just a kind of a big, broader, universal concept of the number 2. And so that means you can have consciousness, subconsciousness. It's yin and yang. There's yin and yang in everything. And so if you're pulling a lot of 2s in a reading, then maybe you're faced with that where you have to weigh things. You have to weigh your options. How do you find that balance, that yin, that yang, that give, that take, that the ocean there, the ocean comes in and the ocean goes out. So right in the card itself, it's kind of speaking to that, in and out, yin and yang. You can look at the 2s in the other elements and say, okay, again, applying the same theory. You have the 2 in the realm of earth. Now, I see earth. It can be your finances. It can be your physical resources, but it can also be your health and your body. And again, your physical resources, which is your health and body. And you could be at the point where you have decisions to make where you're trying to balance. You can see he's only like on 1 foot, and the ocean behind him is very rocky, and those ships are being tossed here and there. So you may be facing a decision of how do you bring balance back into your life, or the decision you're going to make may throw you off balance for a little while, and that's uncomfortable. It feels uncomfortable, so you don't want to make the decision. You don't know what choice will bring back balance into your life. You could have the 2 of Wands, and again, the realm of energy and desire and, adventure, okay? So what's that telling you? You have 2 choices. You've got to set one down in order to bring one desire out into the world. It's sort of the clue here is you need to have one focus. And you can still have the other one safe and sound and secure and on hold, but it's over here. He's only holding one, and in the other hand, he has the world. So to bring that one desire, that one force of energy out into the world needs focus, okay? And again, you'll see that there's water out there. There's a lot of water in these cards. And so, again, your emotions need to be calm, okay? And you need to look out over the broader horizon. You can look at the number 2 in cups. This is your emotions and your heart. Now, yes, it can be a card of relationships, new partnerships, and things like that. But in the realm of the 2 and making decisions, for me, I've always felt that what it's saying is you need to have your head and your heart on the same page and let spirit guide you through your heart. That spirit speaks to you through your heart. And the only way you're going to hear that message to help you make a decision is if your head and your heart are on the same page and talking to each other and listening to spirit, quietly listening to spirit, joined together. Okay, so that's, and then you can take it to the major arcanas and you say, well, what bigger picture can I learn from the number 2? You have the High Priestess, which is the number 2. She is the intuition. She stands between the veil. She stands between the 2 pillars of the spiritual temple, okay? Again, black and white, yin and yang, stepping into the unconscious, the moon, water, waxing, waning, okay? So what can that tell you? What can that lead to understanding about the number 2? Going higher, if you want to reduce the numbers and you take the number 11, which could reduce down to 2. And again, I'm just extrapolating. I'm just saying, you know, this is a way you can kind of go down the rabbit hole and try to get a bigger picture on what does the number 2 mean to you. Any definition, any example I'm giving is just what it speaks to me, to encourage you to do the same thing and find out how it speaks to you and the words that are meaningful for you. So for me, I look at justice and I say, okay, 11. 11 can be reduced down to 2. What clues about the number 2 am I going to get from jealous? All about the balance. And for me, it's, you know, the justice is like your values, your highest good, fairness. And so if you're going to make decisions and you need to kind of weigh things, follow your values. Always put your values and what is fair first, if you can, for personal decisions for yourself. And so maybe there's a little guidance in that. Again, you can take the card 20. 2 plus 0 equals 2. And here it's like you have above and below. You have your earthly, leaving the earthly behind, and above your highest calling. So how can the number 2 advice come through the card? This card, it could be go, whenever you're making a decision, go for your highest good. Put your highest good first. And that won't lead you wrong. Okay. So again, that's just kind of going down the rabbit hole of how you can look at the number 2. So as an example of, as an example of doing a reading with just one card, when I was at a retreat, when I go to retreats, sometimes at breakfast time, I bring my deck down with me. And as we're having breakfast, I'll pull like one card for a person if they'd like, and just tell them the day or the next couple days, you know, what are the energies surrounding that day. So for this one woman, I pulled the 2 of Swords. And, you know, it's not the Tower, it's not the Death card, it's not, you know, it's just the number 2. And I asked her the question, I said, are you having difficulty making a decision? And she burst into tears. And so I said, okay, I said, let's go off to the side here and do you want to talk? I'm here to listen. You know, I'm not going to make the decision for her. I'm not necessarily going to advise her in any way, but I could tell she was having an emotional release, and I wanted to, you know, give her the space to have a little privacy. And if she wanted a shoulder, I offered my shoulder to be there. So we went off to the side, and she was so locked up inside, torturing herself over this decision that ended up being a self-created decision. It wasn't even a decision that was being put upon her. It was a decision she had sort of manufactured in her mind. She was trying to decide whether to do something or not do something, because she thought doing this thing would be in the best interest of someone else. And she really felt in her heart of hearts this was the noble thing to do, that this really needed to be done. But for herself, she didn't really want to do it, but she thought that that was being selfish, that she should sacrifice herself to do this noble thing that she thought was so important. Nobody was asking her to do this. The other person wasn't asking her to do this. This was all kind of self-created in her mind. And so we talked about that. And I simply asked her questions like, you know, to kind of get her to talk about it and talk about her thought processes. And kind of, she came to the conclusion that she realized it was self-imposed, that it really was okay to put herself first, that she didn't have to make this decision right now. She could put it on the shelf. She could never make the decision and just decide, no, I'm going to take care of myself first, and that would be okay. She got to a place where she could release herself from this self-imposed torture and stop beating herself up and just accept that it's okay to take care of your needs first. And the world's not going to fall apart. This other person's life is not going to be destroyed because you made this choice. The only thing we have control over is our own choices for ourselves. If she had made a choice for this other person and did this big decision, this life-changing, for her and this other person, this big life-changing decision, because she thought it was the noble thing to do, she had no idea. It might have ended up being the best thing, or it could have been the worst thing. But if she didn't do it, again, that could be the best or the worst. She didn't have to sacrifice everything. And she was just, had just gotten so up in her head about it. So from just a simple one card reading at a retreat, she was able to walk away from that with a smile and a lighter heart and give herself permission to put her self-care first. And that's the power of tarot. And that's the power of tarot when it's handled responsibly and when it's handled gently and with compassion, and you don't solve the problem for people. You're not telling them what to do. You're just bringing insight to them. It's like the cards are asking you questions. And this question was, are you stuck making a decision? Are you having trouble making a decision? And from there, a discussion grows. You know, I did another reading at that retreat as well, and it was a little bit longer reading. So as we got into the discussion, we just brought out more cards that led to other questions, that led to more discussions, that led to more depth to help the person make choices and decisions on the path they wanted to take. So none of what I said to this person came from memorizing a meaning, a specific meaning for this card. Because if you look at a book and a book tells you this card means you have to make a decision, and or you know, whatever the meaning is. Okay, so you have to make a decision. This card says whatever decision you make isn't going to work out well, or that decision you just made isn't going to work out well. Just making this up, okay? And you say to yourself, that's all it means. This book said this is what this card means. But then how do you read that in all the types of situations that it could come up? How can you read this in the context of the cards that surround it, the question that was asked, the energies of that moment, of the situation, if you're locked into a book meaning? And it is impossible and not fun to memorize 78 meanings for the cards upright, and then if you want to include reversals, reverse meanings. That's not much fun. But what is fun, at least for me, is exploring the possibilities and the bigger concepts. And then one concept leads to another and to another and to another. And you can spur that by looking at the other twos. You can spur that discussion by looking at the corresponding, majors if you want. If you want to say, oh, well, there's 1 through 10 in the majors as well. I can look at those and see what that tells me about the number 2. You can read books without the intent of memorizing, but just with the intent of going, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that person sees it as that. Oh, okay. Well, that resonates. You know, if it comes up in a reading, I could see where that could be relevant. You know, or although that doesn't resonate with me, I'll forget that, you know. And don't worry about like, oh, now I've got 25 keywords. Now I've got 30 keywords. And trying to keep it all straight in your head. Tarot is fun. It's engaging. It's a learning experience for you. And it's just, I'm very passionate about it. So that was just a little example of how I approach something as simple as the Two of Swords and how you can have a marvelous journey down the rabbit hole and see where it takes you. And a nice exercise, which, you know, do it with every card. Take your time. Do it with every card. See what happens. Do it either in order. Do it with your favorites. Do it with your least favorites. That's the most interesting when you do it with your least favorite cards. Why don't you like them? So there's some food for thought, a little bit more insight about me, my approach to tarot, my reading style, my teaching style. And as we, you know, as the channel grows, I will definitely be having little mini lessons, I guess you can call them, you know, or at least tips on how you can learn to use tarot for yourself and to really just have fun with it and learn from it and really just, I can't wait to share all this energy and passion I have for tarot with all of you. So, okay, hope you enjoyed. Take care. Bright blessings. See you next time. Bye-bye.